Welcome into the latest episode of the Five on the Floor podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Make sure to check out 5reasonsports.com for all your latest South Florida sports content. Of course, we have some columns and stories up there about the passing of Don Shula. Also, check out the latest 3 Yards Per Carry podcast, where I went on with Larry Bluestein from 5 Rings Canes and spoke to Alfredo Arteaga and Chris Kaufman about Shula's legacy in South Florida and in the NFL. Also check out our YouTube channel and, of course, our merchandise, because there's just been an announcement. Tua is going to be wearing number 1, but you can get all the Tua 20 t-shirts and all the others, Fat Tua's Day and everything else on our site. I want to tell you about one of the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. And as we mentioned, we have many new sponsors, and actually we're going to even bring one of them on. Courtney Harris is going to be coming on the program here a little bit later, but one of the sponsors I want to introduce you to is the Gonzalez and Tybor Law Firm. You can find them at bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. Bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. You know, a lot of people don't like to talk about bankruptcy, but it's one of the few laws that exist to actually help consumers. And the new stimulus package that came out was signed by the White House after passed by Congress, has made some important changes to the bankruptcy laws. So it's important to have a lawyer explain those changes. Don't just try to figure it out on your own. They've got payment plans and little to no upfront fees. And Gonzalez and Tybor can help you or anyone you know. If you're lucky enough to make it through this with no financial problems, chances are you know someone who isn't that lucky. Gonzalez and Tybor can help. Even before the pandemic, a lot of people were carrying a lot of debt, living paycheck to paycheck. Bankruptcy can give them a chance to start fresh. And here's the thing, it does not ruin your credit. In fact, most people see an increase of 100 to 150 points on their credit score within a year of filing. So here's the phone number. It's 954-LOCAL, 678-8354. An attorney will answer your call. Again, it's 954-678-8354, or the website bankruptcyisgoodforyou.com. And now, today's episode.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a Miami Heat and NBA podcast from Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, a.k.a. Alf954. Brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back. We've got Alphonse Sidney. We've got Alex Toledo. We're going to do something kind of off the cuff tonight a little bit. I did want to get to some news related to the NBA situation. We talked a lot on the last episode about the possibility of playing in Orlando, and I was feeling pretty good about that until I talked to 2 people who are, you know, pretty heavily associated inside the league, and they both kind of nixed the idea to me today. They said that they're not anticipating a season. They're worried about next season, which I don't think anybody wants to hear. And the problems are, 1, testing. Until there's widespread testing, there's not going to be any NBA basketball being played, even if there's no fans. And the other problem, and we touched on this a little bit on the last podcast, is that you may have to quarantine players for like 6 to 8 weeks to play out the playoffs. And that's going to be a hard sell. So I don't mean to start this one on such a downer, guys, but it wasn't what I was hoping to hear today.
I mean, I definitely was disappointed when you had first sent that to us. You sent us the actual text, and I was like, man, just it was disappointing, right? Because like you mentioned, the Orlando thing seemed so reasonable, and it's like, well, there you have it, right? Like, people who would know better are telling you, probably not, even though it seems like everybody is pushing for at least the playoffs to happen. And it's like, oh, that's not going to happen. And we don't know when next season is going to start, even though Woj reported they're looking at December. Yeah. Maybe what these guys are telling you is that's just an optimistic plan, not one based on any timeline.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, Alf, is optimism. I think it's being prepared for the possibility, but I don't get the sense that everybody thinks the testing is going to be ready in time for them to do this. And again, the Orlando ideal, which I like, and I think you like, we've all talked about it, but you do have to sequester players probably away from their families. Like I was talking to one agent today who basically said to me, look, every prominent player comes with 15 people.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not 1 or 2 guys. I mean, we're just thinking in the sense of the 15 players on the team, but it's the staff, it's the coaches, it's the executives, and then it's the families, and then it's the agents, and then it's the marketing people. And how do you decide who to keep away? And so the numbers start to get larger than they just appear on the surface.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's complicating matters is, like, you saw that new report about the new projections for the amount of deaths because people were opening up too early, which is counterintuitive. You keep seeing the memes. The parachute slowed my fall, so I'm going to take it off now, mid-descent. So, I'm not trying to be on one political side or another here, but the fact that we are reducing social distancing standards is going to make it even harder, because if there's a second surge, I mean, you're just going to push back everything they're talking about another 4 or 5 months. And where does that put you? That puts you almost in December. So it's it does put you in December.
And so now politics is directly affecting sports.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. You can't stick to sports on this. That you just can't. And then, you have like the ultimate stick to sports buffoon, who's Clay Travis. Every tweet of his is about sports. He just wants you to stick to sports when it's not his perspective. That's basically how this works. We all know that. So every tweet of his, and his tweet today was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen, which was he went out to dinner with his family in Florida yesterday, and he's fine. We're all fine. I mean, it takes up to 14 days to incubate.
He's never heard of an incubation period, but I mean,
is he just trolling? I mean, are these people just trolling?
Absolutely,
and I'm
trolling.
buying it. Yeah.
First of all, he didn't. I guarantee you, he didn't go out with his family,
right?
Because he's not stupid, and I mean, he is stupid, but he's not that stupid.
He must be north of Palm Beach County.
Yeah, he's just trying to get a rise out of people, and that's all it is, And we fall for it. But then there's people that fall for it and say, yeah, you know what? I am going to take my family out. You know what? And it's just, and it's sad because the people that are falling for this stuff and falling for the fact that it's a hoax and it's fake news and it's not a real thing and that it's overblown and we're all going to be fine. They're the ones going out there protesting, and they're the ones that are not, usually they're not the ones that are in a great economic place to be doing such a thing. And then they put the first responders and the police. And I feel so sorry for those policemen who have to stand there and get yelled at and spit in their face, because they're trying to protect the public health. So it's all fun and games when you're trolling on the internet, but there's people out there who will go out there and do stupid things. And to bring it back to sports, the fact that people are bound to the pressure of easing social distancing is why we're not going to have sports till the end of the year or early 2021, because there's going to be a second surge and we're just going to be stuck in the house even longer.
And that's, again, why we can't separate the two things. I mean, and look, the commissioner is navigating the political waters too, because it's not just what the White House wants or what the commission that's maybe shut down now by the end of the month wants. It's also what the various governors want. It's also what the various city officials want. It's, can you play in one place but not in another place? Now, I saw that California is starting to open up, which surprises me because they were one of the first to shut down. But Newsom has done a pretty good job out there. I think even members of the other party agree on that. And so you're basically in a situation where maybe they are ready, but we don't know. And, the NFL seems to be full speed ahead. I mean, they're putting out their schedule. This is typical difference between the NBA and the NFL, in my opinion. Like, the NFL is all bravado. Like, they're putting out their schedule on Thursday. They're putting it out, and so that's going to get people all hyped that football is starting, right, around Labor Day weekend, that the real games are going to start. And that's going to be great until week 3, right, when it's all called off. I mean, that feels to me like where that's headed. And so I don't want to be so negative, and that's why the last couple of weeks I've been more positive, because I've looked at it and I've said, okay, maybe there's a real chance here, because everything was, you were having these plans that were leaking about Orlando. I was talking to people inside the Heat organization who seemed a little bit more encouraged. But, yeah, I got slapped in the face today. I did because, one of the two people was like, we're not playing. He's like, oh, this season's gone. Stop talking about this season, Ethan. Let's talk about next season.
Oh my God.
I mean, I do think that there is a way for it to happen. It's going to take huge sacrifices by a lot of the players, the coaching staffs, the teams, organizations. But when you talk about the money that's involved, like sometimes the money outweighs everything, right?
Yeah.
The sacrifices that it's going to take, like, yes, I'm going to have to be sequestered for 6 to 8 weeks. And then you're really only talking about the NBA finalists, that it's going to take that long. I mean, almost half of the league is probably going to play 4 or 5 games and go home, right? And then, you know, as you go through the rounds, only the NBA finals teams are going to be the ones that are, you know, are locked down for almost 2 months. So maybe, you know, if you look at it, if you're LeBron and the Lakers, if you're Kawhi and the Clippers, if you're Giannis and the Bucks, do you say that it's worth it? You know, if you're the Hawks, right? Do you say, okay, I'll take a week, or you know what I mean? I'll take a week and, you know, I'll go get tested and, you know, play a few games, collect this check and go home. That's what it really boils down to, because the longer it goes, the less and less people are affected by it as far as the NBA is concerned. But
that's true. That's true. It's like a tube that goes down, and then essentially you're just.
But could you imagine one person getting sick?
Well, that's probably going to happen, isn't it? I mean,
it has to. I mean, look what happened to Gobert. It has to happen.
Right. It has to happen, and then you have to wait 2 weeks for everybody. Everybody was around that person, and everybody was around the people they were around to get tested, and it just again, I think we're all thinking this in the terms of we want it to happen. We're watching the NBA players all working out. You know, the Heat have been very out there, very visible. Riley's done interviews. And so it feels like they're all holding on for something, right? They're trying to keep everybody around. But I just wonder what happens if the bottom drops out of this. Like I was told today there's no drop-dead date. There's still no drop-dead date for this is the point where now at one point I was told August 1st. Today I was told there is none. They're just going to let it play out, and then react and adjust. And so which is really all they can do, I guess. But the other number I was told again today, we've talked about this in the pod, that the magic number is 70 for these what's called RSNs, what's related to TV. They got to get the teams to 70 games. And that's why you mentioned the Atlanta Hawks, right? Because then you got to start bringing back teams that are already eliminated from the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that makes it really tough.
Do you think they'll ever get to the point where they're okay with someone getting sick and going forward?
I don't know.
If it's the Lakers are playing, Danny Green comes down with COVID. Nobody else on the team has tested positive for it yet. Do they continue to play? Like, that's where you have to be as a league, and you have to be okay with that. For the NFL to say they're going to play, you have to be okay with 2 guys on the Eagles having COVID-19, being sent home, and then continue to go play a football game.
Right.
Like,
and
who's going to –
And with that, it's not 15, man. It's 53. And there's more staff.
That's what I'm saying.
There's more coaches.
So, do you have the balls to do that? That's what I want to know. Like, and then are the players going to sign up for something like that? Because you can't start a season when as soon as one person gets the virus, you have to shut down the whole season. You basically you might as well not start. You have to be.
But isn't that basically, Alf? Isn't that basically what the federal? And again, I don't want to get into too much politics on this show. We're going to get into back to some basketball in a second. Right after the break, we're going to bring on our guest who's waiting. But if you take a look at what the government basically did today, that's essentially what they said. I mean, even Fauci came out and said we're going to have to live with a certain amount of death and risk now. And so, and even when I was talking to a doctor friend of mine. You know, and he's not an epidemiologist, but he's pretty in tune to a lot of stuff. And he's like, listen, we have to just get used to the fact this is going to be real life now. Like, this is something that everybody's going to have to live with. So I do think that's a societal judgment that's being made. Now, I don't personally feel we have the best person in charge to make those kind of judgments, because I don't think he's making the judgments in the best interests of the American people. It's in the interest of his reelection campaign. But these are judgments that people are making, and the leagues have to make them too. And the NFL is going to go full speed ahead, I think. I just that's what they are. Right?
I just don't think the players will stand for it. But
they may not. But the Players Association in the NFL is weak. Okay, and the NBA is a lot stronger, and in baseball, it's stronger than both of them.
They'll fill out those rosters with guys who want to play.
That's right.
Coronavirus or no.
I mean, they'll bring back the replacements from like the 1981 strike season if they're available. Like, they'll get anybody they can. So anyway, it was
Johnny
discouraging.
Football will be
Johnny Manziel. He will be exactly. All right, so we're gonna get to some basketball here in a second. We're gonna bring on our guest, Courtney Harrison, who's gonna introduce to you kind of who he is and what he represents, and he's going to have some fun with us. So we will be right back. All right, now we're going to do something a little bit different on the podcast. You're used to me reading ads and introducing our sponsors, but we've decided that we're going to start letting the sponsors introduce themselves, because our sponsors are basically all from South Florida, and you can get their products and you can visit their businesses in South Florida. And so today we've got, you are a Heat fan, Courtney, right? I'm pretty sure of that, right?
Absolutely. Huge Heat fan.
All right, huge. That's what I thought. All right, so we've got Courtney Harris down here in South Florida, and your business, and I've already sampled this. I'm going to get another one, is Christopher's Bakery. Tell people about it.
Absolutely. So it's Christopher's Bakery. We're actually all online. So you can go to christophersbakery.com, and we're able to ship products all across the country, and we can deliver right there in South Florida, really Palm Beach, Broward County, Dade County. We'll drive and we'll meet you. The pandemic has kind of changed things for us a little bit, but we're still shipping things all across the country. We have cakes, we have cookies, cupcakes, muffins, all sorts of things. We even do pies in the holiday time. And, you know, my name is Courtney, but it's named after my brother, Christopher. He was born epileptic, and he, you know, unfortunately spent a lot of time at Nicholas Children's Hospital. And so we actually donate a portion of ourselves back to Nicholas Children's Hospital, work with them for epilepsy research.
And again, there's a discount with us too. Don't forget that. So go to christophersbakery.com/5 reasons. Spell it out. I know everybody always has an issue with this because I always change it. Spell it out. 5 reasons, FIVE. And then the code is 5 reasons. Also spelled out. Like I said, I got the one with the chocolate chips. I saved a little bit for my daughter. She ate the rest of it. I think I put that in Instagram. She ate the rest of that in one afternoon and went back for more. So definitely check that out. So again, Christopher's Bakery, and we're happy to have you with us. All right, guys, we're going to do this. The other 2 guys, Alex and Alf, I've sent these to. Courtney's going to be totally blindsided. So
that's fine.
Because
That's
we're
not fair.
I think that's about right. I mean, that's how we treat the newbies here. All right, so there's a Twitter account. There's all kinds of Twitter accounts doing this thing called Start One, Bench One, Cut One, because we're all bored. So it's basically picking 3 players that are somewhat similar in some way and deciding which one you would start, which one you would bench, and which one you would cut. It's kind of
cut.
Right,
sorry.
cut. Well, it's kind of similar to
F, marry, kill.
F, marry, kill, right? which did you see that the other day? That Sue Bird and who's the other player? They got Jimmy Butler.
Megan Rapinoe.
Yeah, Megan Rapinoe. They got Jimmy Butler. Well, they had a funny quote too. They said usually when you're on your iPod watching 2 lesbians, it doesn't look like this. And so Jimmy got a kick out of that. But and actually, I'm working on Jimmy for the pod, by the way. He's got nothing better to do, so I started working on that today.
We should get him on 5 reasons to drink. That'd be fun.
Oh boy.
We'd all be in trouble. There go our credentials, by the way.
Yeah, probably. It might be worth it. If they're never playing again, it doesn't really matter. They got it, but they got him to do F, marry, kill with Spoelstra, Thibodeau, and Brett Brown. And even Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe knew Brett Brown was killed.
That's funny.
So the other 2, it was decided between Tibbs and Spo, and he said he would Netflix and chill with Tibbs. he said Spo's the one. So I've been telling you guys that on the podcast. Like he fell in love with Spo after week 1 when he tested him, and Spo pushed back, and that pretty much since then he's loved Spo. So I know the Spo haters are gonna hate that, but that's what it is. All right, so let's get to it. We're doing start 1, bench 1, cut 1. And this is primes, I think. This is what they're doing. So, again, we want to credit the Twitter account for giving us some entertainment. It's The Hoop Central. They've got about 300,000 followers on Twitter. Here we go. We'll do these quickly. All right, we'll start with Alf, Alex, and Courtney, and then we'll go the other direction for the next one. Klay Thompson, prime Ray Allen, prime Reggie Miller. Alf.
You start Ray Allen because, I mean, they even show him in the Sonics jersey.
Yes.
And that guy was a monster. I mean, he wasn't just he was a great 3-point shooter, but he could do everything else. Then you bench Klay because, I mean, Klay's one of the greatest shooters of all time, but I don't think he can do as many things as Ray can. And then, of course, you cut Reggie Miller. And And I don't care how good he was as a basketball player, his post-career broadcasting has completely taken him out of the running for me.
I don't know if we can count that. Can we count that?
Yes, you can. Reggie Miller's one of the few. You can. Him and Paul Pierce.
That feels unfair. All right, Alex, you're up.
Man, I was going back and forth on this, but now I kind of want to, differentiate myself from Alf. So what I'm going to do is start Ray. We agree there. But I'm going to bench Reggie and cut Clay, man. And I love Clay. I'm a big fan of his. He's a better defender than the other two. But Reggie was out there as the first option, being a killer. And Clay never had that burden, man. At least Ray had to do it. He was good at it. He was very athletic and I think more skilled than the other two. And Reggie was I don't think Clay could do what Reggie did. I think Clay has always had the luxury of being exactly in the role that he should be.
Courtney?
All right. For me, I kind of went back and forth. I grew up as a kid loving Reggie Miller, but, I'm with Alf. I can't, just based off of today, I can't go with Reggie. So we're going to start Ray because, Ray, the shot, everything. We got it. I'm going to bench Clay, and really it's because a couple of years ago I started calling him. I nicknamed him future starting shooting guard for the Miami Heat, Klay Thompson. So I'm going to stick with that, and I'm just going to keep up with that nickname, and I'll say Klay Thompson because I love that guy. I love his shot. I love his form. And then we'll cut Reggie, although it breaks my heart.
I feel like Tyler Hero should be one of the three. I'm going with Ray as the starter because people forget that Ray was a dynamic, not just shooter, but offensive player. There's a name for Klay Thompson in Golden State. They called him Clay-ups because he has the worst layup form of all time. Ray could score in a number of ways. To me, Ray's first, but I'm going
with the dunk contest.
I know people forget
Ray
that.
was in the dunk contest.
He was now never the defender that Clay was, but I'm going with Reggie second. Only because because of what Alex said. Clay's never Clay has had moments where he's carried the Warriors, but he's never been asked to do it consistently. He's always been able to kind of operate more in the shadows. Reggie was everything for Indiana, even though statistically he's overrated. But I was a Knick fan at the time, and if you're a Knick fan at the time, you have enough respect for Reggie as a player. That to me he's second on this list and Clay is third. All right, so let's. I'm sorry. Well, I know that's not sorry about that. All right, let's get to the next. Let's get to the next one. We'll go the other direction here. This one's for Courtney. Start, bench, cut. Again, this is prime. Dame Lillard, Kyrie Irving, John Wall.
All right, I'm going to start Dame. Just end of game situations alone has me starting Dame. This is tough. I love John Wall's playmaking. I love his speed, but I'm going to have to go with Kyrie on the bench, and I'll cut John Wall. Somebody that injury prone. The guy hasn't played in how many years now? At least, effectively. I can't trust that, so we'll go ahead and cut him.
Alex.
This is really tough, man. I think I'm going to start Dame just because of what he's been able to do as the leader of his own team. And I think that's what's going to differentiate my choices here. I'm going to choose Kyrie over Wall just because I've seen Kyrie do it in the finals. He had, maybe one of the best 3-game stretches in NBA Finals history, when they beat the 73-win Warriors. Kyrie can't do it on his own. That's why I'm benching him. He got embarrassed last year by the Bucks. And I'm cutting John Wall just because, the best that he could do as a leader of his own team was get to the second round. And I know this is just kind of simplifying it, but I guess I'm just using playoff success as a tiebreaker because I think all of these guys are comparable talents when they're at their peak.
Alf?
I'm starting Dame. I think we all kind of agree. Dame is just a monster. I love that guy so much. I want him on the Heat, but he'll never get here. I'm gonna go against the first two. I'm actually gonna bench Wall because we're talking about Wall's peak, and Wall's peak is one of the best one of the best point guard defenders in the NBA. And the speed and the efficiency wasn't great at all times, but at his peak, it was efficient enough, and he was a great scorer. I hope one day he can get back to 80% of what he was. I doubt it, but I'm hoping that he can. And unless LeBron James is babysitting Kyrie, I don't trust him. He seems to be a cancer everywhere else he goes. So unless LeBron James is on this team this fictional team we're creating, I'm cutting Kyrie because I don't trust him, and I think he's a terrible teammate.
Dame Lillard is an easy choice here. I don't think there's any argument. The second one, I don't think Kyrie would accept being on the bench, so I can't put him on the bench. I've got to cut him. So I'll go with John Wall second. I think I'm a little too close to this because I covered Kyrie for a couple of years, and I kind of know what he does to a team from the inside, and it's not great. I think on pure ability, I would take him over John Wall, but the defensive argument makes sense to me, and I also think John Wall was a pretty good leader at his peak. They got to the second round playoffs. It wasn't his fault they didn't get further.
That was a bad team. It was a really bad team.
Yeah, I
could you imagine the Wizards right now with the way Bill's playing if John Wall was healthy?
Right. Well, if they liked each other too, which was part of the
well, that's another thing.
But that was another issue. All right, so we all agree on Dame. All right, here's another one. Reverse order this time. We'll go to Alf. So I feel like Alex is always in the 2 spot. So this is no injuries. No injuries, okay? This one makes me sad. Grant Hill, Brandon Roy, Penny Hardaway. Alf.
This one's damn near impossible, man. This is like no matter what I do, it's going to hurt my feelings. Because Brandon Roy, with no injuries, God, he was good. But I just didn't see enough of him. So with no injuries, I'm going to say I'm starting Grant Hill, which hurts me because I love Penny Hardaway, which was interesting. Nikias Duncan was breaking down the Bulls Magic series from the first year Jordan came back. And just to see a young person like watching Penny Hardaway for the first time was just actually pretty damn cool. So I'm starting Grant Hill because Grant Hill was going to be Magic Johnson if he never got hurt. And then I'm benching Penny Hardaway, and that is like 1A, 1B for me because both those guys were amazing when they were fully healthy. And then I'm cutting Brandon Roy, and it makes me want to cry.
Alex?
Man, I got to say I'm almost pretty much at the same place as Alf. And I think I'm going to go starting Penny over Grant. I'm not 100% sure why, but I guess just because we saw more of Penny in his prime than we did Grant Hill. But I think Penny would have been maybe, the third guy in that pattern of shooting guards during that era, like basically behind Jordan and Clyde. I think Hill would have been an elite player, an elite wing player during that time. And I just don't think Brandon Roy had the skill set that the other two had. And I loved him as a kid, man. I was rooting for him hard in that 2011 season versus the Mavericks. He had that one crazy game when he came back. But I love Brandon Roy as a player. He's really good. I don't think he was as good.
All right. So for me, I'm with you. It's a toss-up between Penny and Grant. I put Penny 1 for 2 reasons. One, because he's 6'7", and back then in the 90s, he was, that was sort of unprecedented size for a point guard. So he was sort of changing the game in a way that we hadn't really seen outside of Magic in that time before. And so for me, Penny is 1. I put Grant 2, and that's the other reason. I just grew up a Carolina fan, and so it's hard for me to put a Duke guy at number 1. That's just totally personal. And then 3 is Brandon Roy. I actually agree with Alf. I just didn't see enough of Brandon Roy. Like, he also had size, and he was, a crazy, crazy gifted player. But I just didn't see enough of him at his peak to be able to put him there. So I'm, starting Penny, benching Grant, cutting Brandon Roy.
Yeah, I've got Brandon Roy 3rd, and again, it's not meant in any disrespect because I think he could have had a Dwayne Wade level career. Actually, I'm a different type of player.
Wow.
I think he could have. There were moments where you saw it, and he filled up a box score too. Like
there were flashes, man.
Yeah. He was really.
I don't think he was the same type of playmaker as the other 2 guys, or as D-Wade.
Well, that's the thing, and so the other one is really hard for me because Penny, I felt at one point looked like he might be the best player in the game, but I saw Grant up close at his peak, and sentimentally, I'm going to go with him because I was sitting courtside in the series where it all fell apart, where, he's playing against the Heat on an ankle he never should have played on, and they got swept out by a team captained by Anthony Carter. And Grant tried to push his way through it and couldn't, and was never the same player after that. The other thing is, again, I know we're doing peaks here, but I felt like Grant recovered from the injuries to become more productive than Penny did ultimately. Which makes me sad. I mean, we saw Penny in the Heat uniform. People don't like to remember it.
Heat legend, Penny Hardaway.
Yeah, it was hard to watch. I mean, Grant Hill sort of carved out an 8 to 9 year career as a role guy, which was, just him putting his ego aside to do that after who he was, I thought was impressive. It's close, man, but I'm gonna go.
I was a locker room guy too, right? Like when he was a veteran.
Was the best. He was the best. I mean, Grant's one of the all-time people. I got lucky one day. I was in Orlando covering a game courtside. I think it was a preseason game during the Big Three era, and Grant just sat down next to me and was talking to me for 30 minutes about basketball, because we were really watching the game. And I mean, he didn't really know me. I mean, he'd seen me before. I'd interviewed him, but it was a pretty cool experience. He's a really good dude. As is Penny, actually, and Penny's done really well afterwards too. As is Brandon Roy. But I just think it's Grant slightly over Penny. All right, let's get to the next one. We'll rotate it. We'll go to Courtney on this one. Start, bench, cut, primes. Curry, Harden, Giannis.
All right, so I'm starting Giannis. I mean, first of all, we got to get the Greek Freak down to Miami. But that size, that ball handling, just all he has to do is develop a shot, which I do believe will come. So we're starting him. I am off the bench. He can always get some threes for you, and then no one wants to watch 25 free throws a game unless it's Dwayne Wade in 06. So I'll get rid of Harden. We'll cut him.
Alex?
Honestly, I feel like I'm going to be the only one to do this, but I'm cutting Giannis. And
wow! You just killed the dream, man. He stayed in Milwaukee.
Honestly,
he signed with Dallas. He signed with Toronto.
Well, listen, I do this just because I know for a fact Giannis isn't listening. If he was, I would start him.
You don't know that for a fact. You don't. You're assuming that.
I mean, we're all bored. He could just he could be watching some type of YouTube stuff, basketball, and falls asleep, and this video ends up playing, and he hears it as he wakes up.
You're losing your credential, Alex. You realize?
Yeah. I think Giannis, we haven't seen enough of him yet. I do think once we see more of his career, I probably would end up putting him over Harden. I think he was the proper MVP last year. He would have been my choice for MVP this season. I think he's basically the modern day Shaq in a way, right? He's more like a hybrid guard forward with the size of a center, but who is physically dominant, just more than anybody, in the same way that Shaq was. And I still don't think he's done as much as Stephen Harden have. I think Harden has just been so prolific. Has been maybe him and Durant and Curry have been the three most prolific offensive players of this generation. And I think they've been historically great. We all clown Harden, but he gave the Warriors a fight those last two playoffs, man. And they got to the conference finals. He hasn't been amazing in the playoffs. That's why you can't put him over Wade. But Harden is a really damn good player. And so I'm going to bench him, and I'm starting Steph because Steph is, that was the easy one for me. I think Steph was maybe the best player in the league for a couple of seasons there, and probably the second best point guard of all time, maybe third.
I'm starting Steph because he's probably top 4 or 5 most influential players of my lifetime. He changed the game, and at his peak, which I think we discount. I feel like we act like we're not in the midst of his peak anymore just because he got an injury. I don't think Steph's going anywhere. I think Steph's still when he gets back next year, I think he's going to kill people. But I'm starting Steph. I'm benching Giannis, whatever you want to call him. Giannis, he's a freak of nature. I love watching him play. He's unstoppable. I don't even know if we've seen his peak yet, and that's probably the scariest part about him. So, at the best Giannis we ever seen is a scary monster, and he's not even at his prime yet. I'm benching James Harden for the reasons that were given earlier, because nobody wants to watch him play. I don't even care if he helps my team win. I don't want him on my team. I don't want to watch him play. I don't want to see that many free throws. I mean, we're in a fantasy world of basketball, and hopefully the fantasy refs won't call the bullshit fouls that he gets, and then he won't be as effective.
If he's on your team, though, in this fantasy, can't you not have Mike D'Antoni as your coach and have somebody else, and maybe they run a different game plan, and Harden is just infinitely more watchable?
Okay, and
really damn good.
When he was on the Thunder, I mean, he was a okay player.
But how do you
that doesn't count.
But how do you even change his game at this point? Like there was a conversation today that they may go after Thibodeau. I mean, how is that going to work? I mean, they're going to grind him into the ground, though. Like, and I mean, but I don't know that Harden is going to conform to anybody at this stage. He's been doing it his way. I mean, they brought in Paul and Westbrook. He's still playing the same way.
No, I don't really agree with that, man. I think that's been what they wanted him to play this whole time. I think that's D'Antoni's whole thing is that
I don't know, man. You watched D'Antoni in Phoenix? You think he wants to play?
But Harden is Nash in this scenario, except they use Harden for even more than that because they use him as not only the main facilitator, but the main playmaker, the main scorer. And, Capella was basically their Amari. Now Westbrook is their Amari. Either way, Harden soaks up more of the usage. I think
the fact that you said Harden is Nash makes me want to reach through this computer and
no.
Yeah, I mean that the ball was out of Nash's hands all the time. Like it's not. I mean, with Harden.
But Harden averages like 11 assists for like 4 straight seasons. He does
after 23 seconds of the shot clock. Like I don't know.
No. I'm not comparing the systems. I'm just saying he is what Nash was. A different version of it, like at a supersized version of it because they rely on Harden way more than Nash. They relied on.
Do you know what the name of the book about the Phoenix Suns was? Do you know the name of the book?
7 seconds or less, or
4 seconds or less, right? Or was it? Or maybe we were right. Maybe it was 7 seconds.
And they all said that was bullshit. By the way, all those people that were involved with those teams said that they actually.
James Harden is 23 seconds or more. I don't know.
I'm not even talking about the systems, though. I'm talking about the fact that they're the linchpin. They're the playmakers, except Harden is relied on for way more than Nash was relied on as far as scoring.
All right, I'm going to answer this one really quickly. Curry, Giannis, Harden. And, and I think Giannis may ultimately be one, but I agree with Alf. We've forgotten about Steph Curry, man. Like, I mean, you have to adjust your entire game plan to him. Like and you do to Giannis also, and Giannis is a better defender than Curry. But I just think Curry's done it longer, and I think what Curry provides, Curry creates even more matchup issues than Giannis, to me. Like with Giannis, we've seen it. Like if you have a defender like Bam, you can slow him a little bit. There's not many like Bam. But with Curry, like there's literally nothing you can do. Like if he's on, like he's going to shoot from 35 feet. It doesn't matter. It makes no difference who's guarding him, like, unless it's the finals. So that's the direction.
He's making it easier for everybody else too.
Yeah, to me, it's Curry. All right, this to me was the hardest one of all of them. All right, so I think we start with Alf on this one. Start, bench, cut. Prime Shaq, prime Hakeem, prime Kareem.
What the hell?
That's hard.
Oh my God. I have to go. The funny thing is, I was going to say I have to go with who I saw play, but I've seen them all play because I'm old. But the problem is who I saw play the most.
Well, you didn't see Kareem play in his prime, though.
I didn't. I saw older Kareem, who was still pretty damn good, which is shocking.
But he wasn't he wasn't Lou Alcindor Kareem, though. Like that's a whole different beast.
Prime Shaq is the most dominant player I've ever seen. Prime Shaq, if he could hit 65%, 70% from the free throw line, they would have had to change the rules of basketball because it just wouldn't be. He'd score 45 points a game easily. Because the only way to stop him was to wrap him up and foul him. But I also saw an older Hakeem give Shaq the business.
Every time.
On many occasions.
Every time, yes.
And prime Hakeem was a better, and I'm not even saying close, a far better defender than Shaq was. And still the same, still a pretty close offensive player. Prime Kareem, they actually did have to change the college rules because of him, because he was such a badass. Oh my God, this is hard. Can I pass?
We'll come back to you. Alex, who do you like?
Honestly, I'm glad that Alf talked so much there because I was just pouring through their best seasons on Basketball Reference right now, and it's so hard. Like it's almost identical. They're like their primes were just so dominant. I think I'm gonna go Kareem to start. I think Kareem is a top 3 player all time. I have him there with LeBron and Michael. I think Kareem was so good in all parts of his career, so productive, lasted for so long, was the ultimate two-way player and two-way big man, which mattered so much more back then. And even here, it has the highest win shares per 48, by the way. If we want to talk about modern analytics compared to, the other two. I think the tiebreaker here, for as far as if I'm going to cut Shaq or Hakeem, this is really tough, man. I think I'm going to go – I think I'm going Hakeem. I think I'm going to bench Hakeem and cut Shaq, even though I would probably put Shaq higher on my all-time list. I think Hakeem did as much offensively as Shaq, was just as dominant. Had a higher assist percentage, by the way, than Shaq by a decent amount, and was so dominant defensively. Won those 2 titles in the 2 years that Jordan was gone. Shaq didn't do that by himself, I know the Rockets had a great team, but didn't they win as a 7th seed for one of those titles?
They were 6th seed. Yeah, they were 6th
yeah.
seed. Yeah.
That first year, they would have beat the Bulls, even if they did have Jordan, by the way. Just want to put that out there.
Funny you were talking about that. I was telling my friends that I don't think they would have won 8 in a row if MJ never left to baseball.
Hell no. They weren't beating the Rockets, that Rockets team.
It's not even that. It's just like 8 in a row is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah,
it's also impossible.
It's impossible, yeah.
Unless you're highest levels, like
unless you're the Celtics and playing roofers and plumbers. But that's
if it was a team to do it, it would be them.
All right, so that's where you're going. All right, so Courtney.
All right. So I'm going Kareem 1. Just to me, the tiebreaker with Kareem is just he had an unstoppable shot. Like, and that shot it goes across generations. Like today, 90s, 80s, 70s, he could get that shot off, and so I think that sort of elevates him for me. When I'm thinking about Shaq or Hakeem, I'm thinking about sort of at the beginning of his Lakers career, Shaq versus 2 titles, Hakeem. Shaq could get any shot. He could just back you down, and he could do whatever he wanted in the paint. But the tiebreaker ended up sort of being defense. And for me, I'm thinking Hakeem wins that one. And he also has an impossible shot. And then when I'm thinking about defense, I'm thinking about even later in Shaq's career, just because it's been on TV recently and they've been replaying these championship games, I think about Shaq almost essentially being pulled for Zoe in Game 6 in 2006 because Zoe was just so much better. Energy, defense, all of that to seal that series. And to me, that's a theme throughout Shaq's career. Like if he wasn't dominating in the paint, he at times could sort of be useless in every other area. So to me, Hakeem wins that one. So I'm going to start Kareem, then Hakeem, cut Shaq, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going the same direction. And that comes with the acknowledgement that Shaq, early 2000s Shaq was a monster. But to me, it's Kareem first, by the way. You can make a case for Hakeem, I think, but I don't think it's a good case. I just think, if you think about Kareem's prime, he was the best player in the NBA. And so it's hard to make an argument against him. Now, Hakeem was briefly, I think, there was a little period of time there, again, when Jordan was gone and he did win MVP. He beat David Robinson in a playoff series when Robinson won the MVP. But to me, it just comes down to sort of basketball intelligence. Not that Shaq wasn't intelligent, but I just feel like Hakeem always outsmarted him when they played together. Like he always found ways to get off a shot. He always found ways to frustrate Shaq. And typically he found ways to win. And so I'm going with Hakeem second and Shaq third. And I don't feel great about it, but that's the direction. Alf, is that what you decide on?
It's hard, man. Like it's just so hard. Like honestly, prime Shaq, and because we're talking about peak, right? We're talking about peak, and that's what I'm thinking of. Peak Shaq was most dominant force in the NBA for 3 straight years, could not be stopped. If you look at what he did in the finals those years, he was averaging 34, 33 points a game. And as much as we talk about him being schemed off the floor, he was not schemed off the floor in those finals, because when they played Hack-a-Shaq at the most pivotal times in the biggest games, he hit his free throws. So because of that, I'm starting Shaq.
Okay.
And it's mostly because this is all just bias, because honestly, you can make intellectual arguments for all of them. So this is just my bias, and because that was my favorite player at that time. And then I'm benching Hakeem just because there was one guy in the 90s before Shaq came around that I used to love watch play, and Hakeem was probably – there was a few guys, and Hakeem was probably at the top of that list. And then I'm putting Kareem last because I didn't see Kareem's peak. But I know I've read at least 3 different books about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just because of the guy he was off the court more than the player that he was, because I just respect him so much as a person. So I've read about him. I've read about his dominance. He was amazing at every single level, which is a crazy thought when you think about. Did he lose 1 game in 4 years at UCLA? Is that what it was?
I think it was 1, yeah.
Yeah.
It was 1.
When you think about that.
He didn't lose much. He didn't lose much in the pros either.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I'm going to cut Kareem, but that's only because I didn't see his prime.
The only wrong opinion we've had tonight.
Yeah, I think Kareem needs to be on at least on your bench or a starter. But I understand it. All right, let's go to the next one.
That was just all emotional. That was all emotional.
No, I know. All right, we got 2 left. All right, here's this one. I feel like this is going to be an emotional decision too. Start 1, bench 1, cut 1. Prime Dwight Howard, prime Amari Stoudemire, prime Chris Bosh. Who wants to go? Courtney, you're up.
All right. So you said Amari, Bosh, Dwight Howard. Oh, I am going to start. This sounds like a homer, but I can start Bosh, 2-way player, defense, which honestly, before he got to Miami, I didn't realize just how great defensively he was.
Well, he didn't realize how great defensively he was, Courtney. He's readily acknowledged that he was not a good defensive player in Toronto. He bought in, but they made him that, which he became. So that's to his credit.
Then that solidifies my point. So if I'm considering his peak to be 2010 to 2014, I'm going with Bosh starting. And then, honestly, I'll take Dwight on my bench. And I'll cut Amari just for the defensive prowess. Not because I like him, because I don't like Dwight Howard in any way. But defensively, to me, he was a monster.
Alex?
So I agree with that last point, except I'm putting Dwight as my starter. I think Dwight in his prime, even though I wasn't as big of a fan, I actually rooted for the Magic in those couple of seasons when the Heat were getting out in the first round before they got LeBron. I was rooting for the Magic to beat the Lakers and to beat the Celtics and the Cavs, by the way. So I like Dwight, but I was always a bigger fan of Bosh and Amari. And I think those are the 2 that I had a hard time choosing between. And looking over their numbers now is so identical. Bosh's best years in in Toronto, and Amari's best years in Phoenix. The only thing that separates them is Bosh's playmaking. His assist percentage was higher. And that's really going to be my tiebreaker here, because you could say, you could give it to Amari for the playoff success, but I think that's just because he was part of one of the best teams of that whole generation. Bosh definitely never had that luxury in Toronto, and then proved himself as a winning player, as a winning 2-way player in Miami. So I'm going to bring Bosh off my bench, cut Amari.
Alf?
I'm actually going to agree with Alex. Prime Dwight, peak Dwight was phenomenal. He should have been the MVP in 2010, 2011.
Yeah. Best defensive player of our generation, other than Kawhi or Draymond.
Yeah, and that's why when people say, ask a silly question, is Dwight a Hall of Famer? Shut up. Yes. Dwight. Yeah. What is he, a 3-time defensive player of the year?
In a row.
Yeah. Get the hell out of here. Is he a Hall of Famer? He is a Hall of Famer. Peak Dwight is an amazing basketball player. The back injuries killed him. And then after that, I was actually leaning towards Amari until I started listening to Alex. And one thing I'll say about One thing I'll say about Amari, Amari benefited a lot from being Steve Nash's teammate. A lot, right? Even when he was on the Knicks, he was dominant. But, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard.
Does he get to that stage where he can do that by himself if it wasn't for his era, his point?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of what Amari was created by Steve Nash. And I think Bosh had to make his own road in Toronto. And then he had to put up the kind of numbers he did in Miami as a third option. Like Amari's never had to be a third option, at least not during his peak. So for Bosh to do what he did as a third option and then also carry that really bad Raptors team to the playoffs, the year he did, averaging a double-double, I really have to. I would give the edge to Bosh, and then I would cut Amari.
You know what I just thought about right now too? The 2 seasons after LeBron left, when Bosh was still just balling as the first option, the same way that Amari was with New York in that season and a half or whatever it was when he was in his prime still. Bosh proved himself as the first option, and they were a winning team.
To me, I think that, and Amari had that blip in 2010, 2011, where he was an MVP candidate for a little bit. So it wasn't just Nash, and he was doing it on the biggest stage in New York. But I just don't, as a defender, he's not close to the other two. He's just not. I mean, he has to be in the right system, and the injuries hurt him. We're thinking of prime Amari, but to me, he's clearly third here. The conversation is between Dwight and Chris. And I'm going to give it to Dwight because, Chris was never a top 5 MVP candidate. Dwight was. And that's, to me, it's a very simple argument there. Now, I don't know if Dwight would have fit quite as well in his prime as a third option like Chris did, because Dwight sort of had a preference for where he wanted the ball and all that, even though he wasn't particularly good as a post player. So I think Chris Bosh was a more flexible player, was a better fit to play with LeBron and Dwayne. Some might disagree with me on that. I think Dwight, we saw this past year, has sort of accepted what he is now. I think if he had accepted it a little bit earlier in his career, he would have been greater. But I'm going with Dwight first and with Bosh second. All right, last one. This one is really hard.
Isn't there
really,
2 more?
Oh, 2 more. We could do the second one too. Yeah, all right. So let's get through them a little quicker, though. This one is really hard. Start, bench, cut. Charles Barkley in his prime, and I feel like there are people who hadn't seen him in his prime until they watched Last Dance on Sunday night. Like I feel like there are people who just think of him as the fat guy on making jokes and hammering people on TNT and don't realize, he wasn't just a good post player. He was running the break, hitting threes on the transition. He was elite. Karl Malone and Dirk Nowitzki. Alf.
I'm definitely starting Charles. I'm not one of these people who just found out Charles is dominant. I remember that Phoenix Suns season, and I remember thinking he was the best player in basketball that year. That's the year he won the MVP, and no disrespect to Michael Jordan, but, he was just, unstoppable and phenomenal. And even you go back to his Sixers year. So, yeah, peak Charles Barkley was a monster. Now, for me, Malone and Dirk are harder because I think what people are going to say Malone was a better defender. Malone wasn't a good defender. He wasn't an elite defender, but he was a better defender than Dirk, but not by – I don't think it was by that much because Dirk's size alone just created a lot of problems. But, Malone had the LeBron James body before the LeBron James body was even a thing. Nobody could even think of a player that big. But I will actually go with Dirk for versatility over Malone. So I'm going Barkley, Dirk, Malone.
Alex?
This one's tough, man. Obviously, I didn't see the careers of 2 of these guys, but I've been a basketball nerd for long enough now. I feel like I've watched a decent amount of tape on them and, I've heard about them or read about them long enough. I'm looking at these numbers right now, and, I'm just using the numbers again as a tiebreaker to actually have some data to use. You guys actually watch these guys for most of their careers. But I think I'm going to agree with Alf. I'm going to start Barkley. I think he was the most skilled of the 3. I think he didn't have a Stockton next to him to really maximize his, his role in the NBA to have an extended period of time as a contender like the Jazz were. I don't think the Suns had that type of longevity, right?
Well, they had KJ. I mean, that was a really damn good team, but I mean, nobody had the longevity of Stockton and Malone. So I think, I mean, that's a tough comparison.
And honestly, to me, the tiebreaker will be, I mean, the tough one will be between Malone and Dirk. I'm going to have to bench Carl. I really don't want to do this. We're supposed to not like Dirk and all that. I'm a fan of Dirk's game. I didn't like him when I was a kid. I'm a fan of his game now. I think he's amazing. He's, one of the best offensive players we've ever seen, and still not as prolific as Malone was. And, again, Malone, I think, had a longer period of being on one of the best teams in the league, where Dirk was always on good teams, but they were only really contenders for, I don't know, less than a handful of seasons throughout his career there. And Malone is still the second greatest scorer of all time?
Dirk won like 60 games, like 10 years in a row. What are you talking about?
No, that's the Spurs. They won 50 a lot of times.
50,
I'm talking about actual championship contention where, the elite teams. I think Malone had that
as many times as Malone did. He did it as many times. I'm not trying to argue. I mean, it's really not a right answer, but I think you're kind of discounting what Dirk did in Dallas a little bit, which is okay because
I just think Karl Malone.
I like to discount what Dirk did in Dallas too. It's fun.
to me, like Dirk's greatness was all about his offense and his leadership and his longevity. And Malone has all of that stuff, except he also has, again, the numbers of the tiebreaker.
He married a 13-year-old girl. So
we're talking straight basketball here, Al. That's why I said I didn't want to do this. But Malone hired.
Dirk's always been about the culture too, so
he has been about the culture.
This is true.
But Malone had higher assist percentage, higher rebound percentage, better defensive win shares. So I'm going to take him over Dirk. Second greatest scorer of all time, by straight totals.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take him.
Courtney.
All right, this one actually isn't as tough for me, even though as a Heat fan, I'm sworn to hate the Mavericks and Dirk. For me, I'm cutting Karl Malone, and the argument is sort of similar to the argument you made in the last one for or against Amari. To me, I sort of look at that system and Jerry Sloan and the pick and roll and wonder how much Karl Malone benefited from that. Like, I'm certainly somebody that remembers Charles Barkley, watching Charles Barkley. I loved Charles Barkley as a kid. It was amazing what he did at his size. So for me, that's an easy start. And then, it could be a toss-up between Dirk and Karl Malone, but to me, I just sort of wonder, just like Amari with 7 seconds or less, how much of that pick and roll system did Karl Malone benefit from? And to me, Dirk carried more of a load for a longer amount of time. So that's my bench.
Yeah, Charles starts for me. I don't think there's really any debate about this. I mean, he played with good teams. I until the Philadelphia thing fell apart. And he played, that Phoenix team was pretty damn good. If you watch them they've been on NBA TV a couple times the past couple of days. I mean, Marley and Hornacek and Kevin Johnson and Cedric Ceballos and Richard Dumas, that was a pretty damn good team. He had pretty good players around him. But with all that being said, he didn't have the consistency of one guy with him running pick and roll for all those years. I respect Karl, but I always viewed Karl as more of a compiler than a dominant player. Look, he's not a compiler in the truest sense because he compiles pretty. But I'm just saying, Dirk to me, some of the teams he played with in Dallas were not very good. And
he did play next to Steve Nash and Jason Kidd, though.
He did.
Won a title with Jason Kidd.
He did win a title with Jason. Okay, with very old, limited Jason Kidd. Okay, now Nash is another story, and Nash sort of got unleashed towards the end of the Dallas tenure. But even with that being said, they didn't have the pieces around him necessarily. Dirk, to me, we talk about guys who were sort of unguardable. And I know Udonis Haslem and James Posey might argue with this, but Dirk could be absolutely unguardable. I still feel like if in the modern game, if you sent a double to deal with Karl Malone, I feel like you could get away with it. With Dirk, I'm not sure it would matter. I'm gonna go Dirk second. All right, this is the last one.
You're saying you at him.
What's that?
You're just saying you at him, and that's it.
That's it, exactly. All right, this one. I don't want long explanations. I want just your first reaction when I give you these. Okay. And I assume this one's a little more complicated because it's historic duos, but I don't think it's prime. I think it's when they played together. So this may affect it a little bit.
That's important to know.
Yeah, because that affects one of the three here. But let's go with, we've got Jordan and Pippen, Shaq and Kobe, Magic and Kareem. First reaction, Alf.
This was easy. It's already in order.
Yep.
And the only reason is because Kareem was not in his prime, and also Kobe was not actually in his prime either, which is kind of, it's mind-boggling because they had a three-peat. But you got to think of the two guys that were actually in their primes won 6. So it's and the other two guys, I think Magic and Kareem only won 4 together. The 5th one, was Kareem still there? If he was, it was an unlimited role.
No.
Did they only win 3 together?
Yeah, they won 3, right? He was there, but then Magic got there without him and lost to Jordan.
No, right? Magic won 5.
Okay.
But didn't Kareem only win 3 with Magic?
That's what I'm thinking. I don't think Kareem was there for all 5.
I'll have to check on that. That doesn't sound right. Who would Magic have won with without Kareem, though? That's what I don't understand.
Worthy and Byron Scott. He did have.
But who would have been the center
Cooper,
on that team?
I don't.
Because
Divac didn't win.
Divac came after. Divac never won.
But but quickly, yeah, it's already in order just because, like I said, Kobe wasn't in his prime and Kareem definitely wasn't in his prime. So it's Jordan, Pippen, Shaq, Kobe, and then Magic, Kareem.
Alex.
So I'm going to completely agree there, and almost for the exact same reasons because of what you said to start it off. They didn't play in their primes together because otherwise Magic and Kareem probably would be the best duo of all time. I would think so, but I'm looking it up here. Yeah, he won championships all the way up until 88.
Yeah.
So he was on most of those still.
He was on all of them.
He was on all of them.
He was in a limited role in that last one. That's what I remember.
Oh, because he wasn't in the 91 versus Jordan. That's for sure.
No.
But they lost though.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying. I'm trying to figure it out in my own head. But yeah, I'm still gonna agree. I think Jordan and Pippen, because of being undefeated in the finals and just being a perfect duo, didn't even really have issues with each other. I'm gonna start them. Bench Shaq and Kobe, because even with the issues, they were just so dominant when they were hitting. And I think that could have kept going for another 2, 3, 4 years, depending on, how much Shaq committed himself to his shape. And then I'm going to cut Kareem and Magic just because of them not being in their primes together.
Courtney?
Similar to LeBron and Wade, by the way.
Yes. Or LeBron and Chalmers. Go ahead.
I agree. All the reasons, laid out are perfect. The only thing I'd add is that, even when Magic and Kareem are together, when Kareem gets hurt, Magic starts at center and they, still wins. So he's fine. He can be all right without Kareem in small spurts.
To be honest, the duo was actually Magic and Worthy, but that's not
you're right.
That's a conversation for another time.
And Kareem and Jerry.
Kareem and
yes,
Jerry.
Actually, yes.
Kareem and Jerry.
For real.
Wilt and Jerry didn't win, right? Wilt and Jerry
I don't think so. Oh wait, did they win that one?
Didn't they?
Or did they win one? Because Jerry won one, right?
Wilt won 2, didn't he?
Yeah. Jerry won 1. Well, we can look that up. Courtney, I'm with you. To me, this one is easy. I think we're being reintroduced to the greatness of Scottie Pippen during this.
You're right. Jerry only won 1. Wilt won 2.
Yeah. I think with Scottie, I think people have forgotten what he was. Even just watching some of the clips, not even the conversations about it, but his ability to handle on all spots on the floor, his ability to elevate the defense. He was a perfect complement. Now, Shaq and Kobe, I think you could argue at their peak, when Kobe was playing at his highest level with him, which I saw a little bit in that Indiana series. I covered that finals. They were unbelievable together.
So you covered Shaq's peak.
I covered Shaq. I covered all of his finals wins. I was at all. I was Philadelphia. Philadelphia.
How have you not talked about this more? No more. We don't hear.
He was remarkable. But I also was that the Indiana series was Kobe's breakout series. there were the 2 games that Kobe carried them, including the overtime game. That was his breakout series. That's when things started to turn a little bit towards him. But I mean, they were a rock star team. Like, they were the Heatles before the Heatles. But I think that when you look at what Scottie and Michael did together, there's no comparison. Magic and Kareem, again, I remember all of Kareem's championship years. I was a kid, and I followed them all the way up through sort of adolescence. And Kareem was really reliable, but, I mean, again, it was about the one shot he had. But it was really more, like you said, about Magic dominating. That team turned over to Magic, and then when it turned over to Magic, it became more about Worthy because it became more about transition. It's amazing to me that a Showtime team had a 40-year-old center dragging up and down the floor. When you think about that in retrospect, it's remarkable.
And you're like, why couldn't Whiteside do it? Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, you think about it. I mean, it's a little bit genius. I mean, look, Riley borrowed a lot of principles from his predecessor and from others, but it's kind of amazing if you think about it. And maybe having Magic makes this seem easier. And Westhead had experimented with it before, but you have a guy like Kareem, and you don't just say, "Hey, we're just going to throw the ball into the post every time and run skyhook." You know, I mean, that's basically. Have him put up a skyhook, and to actually put the ball in Magic's hands when Kareem wasn't getting back or up was a pretty great thing to do. But Magic and Worthy 2-on-4 was still a basket, so it didn't matter.
Kareem underrated outlet passer though.
No, he was excellent. People talk about
Kevin Love-esque.
Yes, he was excellent, and Byron Scott was excellent too.
You want to talk about a compiler like Kevin Love?
Kevin Love is a compiler. Kevin Love is a compiler. All right, so we agreed on most of these.
Those rebounds disappeared in Cleveland.
They did, yeah, as did a lot of other things. But Courtney, tell us again. So Christopher'sBakery.com/5 reasons.
And then coupon code 5 reasons. You spell it out. Our specialty product is a vanilla wafer cake. You can get all sorts of ingredients in there. It is phenomenal. I really appreciate the support, and I appreciate you all having me on and allowing me to talk about it. Again, it's Christopher'sBakery.com/FIVE reasons, REASONS.
We appreciate you having better takes than Alex or Alf. Have a great night.
Do my best.
The bar is low. The bar is low.
The bar is low.
Never been lower.
I'll pod with you tomorrow night, Courtney. All right, thanks, guys.
Right.
Appreciate everybody joining us.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.